Enduro Method is an online strength and conditioning program built for those who ride by those who ride. We are professional coaches dedicated to building the best and most revolutionary off and on the bike training for dirt bikers around. Enduro Method offers a monthly subscription which gives you access to our ongoing current training program. By subscribing to Enduro Method, you receive our Iron Track, which is for those who have a gym or gym equipment, and our Gravity Track for those with minimal to no equipment. We design our training for riders who want to keep their general physical preparedness in top form year-round. If you are interested in joining the monthly Enduro Method training subscription, we are offering a special discount for our podcast listeners. Use discount code EMPodcast23 in all caps for 50% off your first month of training. See the show notes where you can find discount codes and a link for more information and to sign up for Enduro Method. And now, on to the show. College friends and riding buddies, Devin Funaro and Bryce Barsnick started a project together to wrap up their engineering degrees from Colorado State University. They wanted to use the opportunity to build something not only fully functional, but also something they could turn into a business after they graduated. After some brainstorming, they settled on swingarm guards, and Crosslinked Components was born. All right, we're up. So joined today by with Devin Funaro, Crosslinked Components, and you also have a business partner, Bryce Barsnick, who's unable to join tonight, but we're here with Devin and talking about what you got going with Crosslinked Components. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, I'm really excited to join. It's been fun listening to your guys' show over the last like 2 years or something like that. I don't know exactly how long you guys have been going, but yeah, about like I guess a little over a year ago now, I got big into your guys' show while doing a bike packing trip, and I was kind of itching to ride dirt bikes again, and I was listening to your guys' show every episode that I could find.
Nice. I do remember seeing some photos and stuff you had posted on Instagram from that. It looked like a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, it was rad. After we graduated college, which is kind of where the Crosslink Components story began, was in our senior year of college. But after we had graduated, we me and some friends decided that after we get done with this thing, before we start our real jobs, like let's go and ride our bicycles around the world. So we did 4 months of bike packing in Europe, and then also Ecuador. So it was pretty sweet.
Nice. Have you done stuff like that in the past? The bike packing specific?
No, that was the first bike packing trip I had done. First bike packing trip that any of the people on the trip had done. There were five of us: my girlfriend, me, Bryce, and then two of our roommates from college. Um, and Yeah, we had never done anything like that before. I've done backpacking before, like for a couple days at a time, maybe like 2 nights, 3 days or something like that. But it was all new to go and like just leave home for 4 months, but it was pretty fun.
Nice. I mean, a little bit of a side tangent, but have you ever heard the name Jay Peterberry?
No, I can't say I have.
He's, I don't know if he's the godfather of bikepacking, but he's definitely kind of really one of the
Out there.
OG. Yeah. And he's a local here in the Valley.
Oh, cool.
Most people like who are into bikepacking would probably know him. He's just a monster, but he's
Hmm.
set like all kinds of bikepacking records and like the whatever it is from Canada down to Mexico.
Yep.
Self-supported, had the world record for a time. He might still, I can't remember.
That's
But
nuts. And yeah, we were so far away from being any kind of fast or anything like that. Like it was total leisure trip. We were very slow pretty much, but I've been now kind of looking into some of those bike packing races because it seems like such a sufferfest. I don't know why I'm interested.
kind
But
of goes with hard enduro a little bit.
yeah, a little bit, right? But like maybe to a new extreme.
Right.
Yeah, I've been looking at like the Colorado Trail a little bit. It just seems like a cool, like single track heavy kind of bike pack race. And I don't know, probably never do it, but seems kind of cool.
Yeah. it's definitely probably the way you guys did it. It sounds like you were able to take in the sights a little bit more.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean,
Yeah.
anytime you start to put a clock on something, people are like, "Oh, you're out in the great outdoors." Like, yeah, you don't see that shit.
Yeah. You got your head down. I
Yeah,
mean, the guys that are really racing are, and gals are doing it like overnight too. So you're like half the time you're looking through a headlamp that's like 8 feet in diameter, right?
yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, how did you, yeah, what was the kind of the brainstorm session before you got started with Crosslinked components?
Yeah. The idea came to us a year before we kind of started the project. So, um, for me and Bryce are both mechanical engineers. So we went to Colorado State University and got our mechanical engineering degrees. We were buddies for, most of the way through college and we're riding together and that kind of thing. And your final year, you do a capstone project. So it's kind of the culmination of your engineering degree. It gives you a bunch of hands-on experience because you got to go figure stuff out on your own. Um, but our school actually had a program where they did an entrepreneurial senior design capstone project, or at least it was an option to. So about a year before, or right before our senior year, we found out about that, and then it was like brainstorm session. Like, we were actually driving to go down riding in Southern Colorado, and it was like, all right, what are we going to do for this thing? We want dirt bikes, and that was pretty much the only requirement. Um, we had all these kind of crazy ideas, some that maybe we'll revisit in the future, but we were like, it'd be so cool to do adaptive suspension with like ferromagnetic fluid, so you could like change the viscosity of the fluid going through the forks and change your valving, real time or something like that, right? And that's actually been implemented on some like production vehicles,
Huh.
cars. Super cool tech, but so those kind of ideas were going through our head. Another one was the e clutch, and this is one that I think maybe somebody will listen to your podcast and get rich off this one. Uh, but I was like, what if you had a fly by wire clutch, right? So it's just break the whole mechanical link and it's all fly by wire. So you can have as light of a feel as you want or as heavy as a feel. You can change the, you know, engagement rate or whatever. I don't know, get fancy with it. But pretty much it came down to we decided we didn't just want to dick around for a year and have some like silly prototype that was like 10% functional, because all these ideas were way too hard pretty much for two people to get done in 1 year.
Right.
So we were like, what can we do that we can actually get done in a single year and launch a business off of?
Hmm.
And that was kind of the whole reason we chose swing arm guards. I had some on my YZ250 that I bought new like a year previous. First thing, putting all kinds of parts on it, right? Protection stuff. One of those being some competitor swing arm guards, and they had fallen off in the first ride. So that was kind of where it all started. And we said, this is easy enough to get done in a year and launch a business. This is interesting enough to like be hard. Like we knew it was going to be hard enough. And um and we actually thought it solved a problem because the swing arm guards just suck on the market. So that's the impetus. That was the beginning.
When you were, I mean, even starting something like that, what were some of the preliminary hurdles that you were kind of looking at?
Yeah, some of the things we got like a big boost on and we were really lucky with, right? Like if we started a business today out of our garage, maybe we got a drill and some, not much equipment, right? Being at the university, we had access to like a machine shop with CNC equipment, and we also got $5,000 to like go nuts with, essentially. So like those were big boosts. Um, One of the things we had no idea how we were going to do it was how we were going to manufacture them. So we were looking at things like injection molding, for a while I was thinking we were going to do them kind of like John's skid plates, where
Hmm.
he like kind of just folds a flat sheet of plastic up. And this is another aspect where we got really lucky. We ended up having just like a mentor assigned to us by the university, which is kind of standard for the projects. But our mentor said, "Hey, you have to go look at thermoforming for your production method. And by the way, there's a thermoforming machine that some kids built 10 years previous out at, this offsite research center that was part of the university. So it was university owned. And that really gave us a actual avenue to make the product pretty quickly. So that was a huge boost. So I guess those were all hurdles that like we got kind of a lot of help with. So yeah.
Yeah, no, like just the availability of equipment part would be massive. Because even though it appears to be a very simple thing when you look at it, just knowing I still do some and used to do woodworking and find cabinetry and stuff like that. And you become very limited very quickly with the quality of the product, or at least the detail of the product that you can put out by what equipment you have available.
Totally, yeah. And like, I mean, if you have a skill saw and a drill, you can make a bunch of stuff, right? But how good is it going to be? And then how many can you make per hour or whatever, right? With quality. So we got a bunch of that kind of. I don't want to say handed to us, like the thermoforming machine that we use and actually own now. Um, was, like I said, a project from a previous senior design team. Like 10 years previous, they had been tasked, these kids just like us that were now trying to use their machine, have been tasked to make a thermoforming machine. So we got like a 80% piece of scrap.
Right.
So
And
we
is
were like,
that,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, just that machine in general, is that something that like heats it up and presses it into molds?
Yeah, so like the way our swing arm guards are made, it's a thermoforming process, and it starts as a flat sheet of plastic. It then goes into an oven, and the plastic heats up to a point where it gets gooey. So then it gets pliable, but it's not liquid. So it's somewhere, halfway between. It passes its glass transition temperature, is what we call it. You then put a mold up against it, and then now you have like a piece of plastic kind of loosely draped over. Then you pull a vacuum between the mold and the plastic, and that's where it sucks in. And it's just like, vacuum sealing something in a Ziploc bag or whatever. It just conforms to all the little nooks and crannies.
Right. How long did it take to settle on a material that was good? Was that fairly easy, or was that a lot of trial and error?
This is one of the things where, you know, if we were kind of going off of like real engineering or something like that, or we didn't know like the dirt bike industry, it would have probably taken a while. But because we, had seen skid plates and things like that, we kind of knew pretty quickly like we want something like an SXS skid plate or, AXP or whatever. And those guys actually use ultra high molecular weight polyethylene, UHMW. It's become kind of ubiquitous in dirt bike protection because the stuff's just super tough. That stuff's actually really hard to thermoform. It doesn't take the heat and get to this gooey state. So we use HDPE, high density polyethylene, same type of plastic, just a little bit different in its chemical structure, but it thermoforms really easily, and it's like almost as durable as UHMW.
Interesting. When you're doing the mold process, I guess you kind of probably in the beginning just kind of picked one model, one bike to start with.
Yeah, and actually at the time we picked a YZ250, which like looking back, like we should have just skipped it, but it actually didn't last that long. So like the way we made it for the first ones and still do today, is we took a swing arm off a dirt bike. In this case, it was a YZ, but we've now done it to KTMs, gas, and Beta. You take the swing arm off, and then we actually 3D scan it with a piece of equipment that actually has a couple cameras in it, and it can create this 3D construction in like a digital like computer space. So we 3D scan it. A lot of people assume, and when I first heard of the technology, I was like, okay, we just scan it and then we have our mold. But it ends up becoming this like map or picture, and then you have to like go in and hand trace to make your mold, and like kind of there's a little bit of artistry in like sculpting the mold. So it's not like you could cut up a swing arm and use it as a mold, at least for our product. There's a little bit more in it than that, but we scan an old swing arm. We then create a mold, which is, you know, somewhere between a swing arm and their product. And then we actually CNC machine those out of, right now it's an epoxy molding board. So it's just like a really hard epoxy foam. But before we did 2x4s when we were being really cheap, you know, right in the beginning.
Right. And then essentially it's just doing that for every swing arm that's different on each bike, years.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah. In the beginning, it was, you know, we did probably 3 to 5 versions of my YZ swing arm before we got it right, just for the YZ. Then we got better at it, and it took 2 or 3 versions for the first KTM swing arm we did, which was the old PDS style. And then it took, I think, 1 version for the linkage, and then 1 version for the new generation swing arms. So we got a little bit better at it, but it's still like this kind of, there's some artistry in the process and some that kind of stuff.
Yeah. When you were looking at it, how did you come up with like how you attach it to the swing arm? Because I haven't previous used any. I'm planning on buying a set from you guys for the new bike, which I already rode in Arizona and scratched up, but
Oh, Josh.
so it goes. But yeah, just the old way was basically zip ties or hose clamps, right? And like
Yep.
you said, the only ones I saw more on trails than I did on bike.
Yeah, that's like something that I mean, we hate to hear it, but we also like, it's the truth, right? You see these things just littering all over the trails, all over the place. And as the swim guards get more popular, like they're kind of everywhere. Like they're in trees, they're in bushes, they're, you know, everywhere. So it's kind of nutty. But yeah, we looked at it exactly like you did. We're like, okay, so they want you to put it on with zip ties, and you do that. Then everybody, you know, usually goes to hose clamps because the damn things won't stick on.
Right.
And I never like the look of that or anything. It just seems like it doesn't work. Even when you hose clamp them on too, like it's the guards aren't thick enough, so they just crack, and then your swing arm's just getting beat up, especially on that bottom edge. So how did we come up with the way we did it? We actually just kind of, I don't know, it was one of the kind of really early ideas that we had. It's gone through a bunch of refinement, like the bracket itself. We've gone through multiple different versions. We started with like 3/16 thick stainless steel. That was too thick. We used to have 4 bolt holes on it. That was dumb. Like two bigger bolts is way better. Even the threads in the bracket were tricky. Like because of the thickness of the bracket that you end up wanting to use, there's not enough thread engagement in just the metal. So you have to somehow get more threads in it. So some people out there actually have brackets where we did a process called it's called thermal drilling. It's like you don't actually drill a hole, you melt a hole through the bracket, and it like pushes metal out the backside. So you end up with this longer thread in this specific location. So that was super cool. But when we left our university, we couldn't do that anymore. So now they use PEM nuts, which is like a special nut that's pressed in on the backside. So like we settled on the idea of using a bracket to the rear chain adjuster, and that's kind of the like main selling point of our whole process is the whole cover is actually bolted to a stainless steel bracket, which then gets inserted between the jam nut of the chain adjuster bolt. So hopefully for people listening that haven't heard of us, like you can follow along with what I just said. But I mean, you can find pictures of our stuff out there and it'll make a lot of sense. But we settled on that idea pretty quick. The front attachment was always a huge pain. We ended up doing zip ties, which I still like. I mean, if there's something that I hate about our own product, it's the front zip tie. But I don't know. We just never could figure out something that was like better for the front end.
Yeah, and just from a wear perspective, the very front end of that doesn't get hit or catch on anything near as much as the back 2/3 or 3/4.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And like I've run the ones with zip ties on my bikes, like on my YZ for like 200 hours. I got a new bike recently. It only has like 30 hours or something on it, but I've never had problems with zip ties, but I'm like continually blown away by how hard people are on their bikes and how like good people are at breaking stuff. Like I'm convinced you could give somebody like a brick to like put on their dirt bike and they would find a way to break it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I'm blown away with where I have scratches on my bike when I
Yeah,
go
like
wash it or like,
you go look
parent
at it and you're like,
something.
how did that even get there? Like,
Yeah.
what kind of rock did I hit to make that happen? So I
Yeah.
don't know.
It's a cool product. I mean, it's always been one of those things that it's funny to me, like from a resale perspective, when you go to sell your bike, I mean, kind of at this point, it seems like the people who are really serious about riding just go out and buy new bikes for the most part. You will get some people who are well versed in riding and been riding for a while who shop around and, on the used market. But a lot of times you get people who literally they look at plastics, maybe a seat cover, grips, and like that's it. And if those are new and good, like they don't necessarily know what to look for to tell like how well the bike's been maintained or how hard it's been ridden.
And I mean, like for other disciplines of riding, I think it's really hard to tell whether a bike's been ridden hard or not. Like if some hair scramble guy or a moto guy, like you can destroy the engine or I don't know. Like engines are pretty damn tough these days. Like I don't know if anybody's destroying them, but you can be really hard on the engine, like not change oil, all these things, and it's invisible. But hard enduro just brings all that abuse like straight to the surface.
Yeah.
So it ends up being hard on resale, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what for the most part, I feel like that's one of the places that if you kind of have an inkling to look at, the swing arm's a good tell.
Yeah, and like the swing arms are gnarly. Like I've been, collecting pictures of people's bikes and like on my old Yamaha too. For the while it didn't have swing arm guards on it. Like they get hammered. It doesn't take like somebody that's well versed in dirt bikes to like look at the thing and go, "What did you do to that thing? Like, are you nuts?" And then you kind of have to say, "Well, yeah, I guess I am." I went to all the U.S. hard enduro rounds.
Yeah. Well, I think the other part too, I was down, rode a bunch with James Flynn down in Arizona, and he was saying that he had snapped a swing arm an enduro cross this year. I don't remember where or what round, but he didn't have the guards on and he got a dent in the swing arm and then off a jump or hitting a jump or landing. I don't remember which one, but literally
Mhm.
just snapped it in half. And there was no cracks or anything from that dent, but that's something else that those things could help protect from would be just a blunt impact that then is going to weaken the rest of the swing arm.
Oh, totally, yeah. And I've talked about this a little bit to some people, and I'm a little mixed feelings. Like, I think our swing arm guards can help for that, but I'm like hesitant to say they definitely do. Because like James, these other guys, it seems so. The swing arms that I've seen that have broken are almost all in enduro cross. It's happened a couple other times. We've heard of it, but it's almost all endurocross. How much it happens based on the endurocross numbers, like a decent amount, you should be worried about it. Based on like hard enduro or like regular riding numbers, like pretty much never. But yeah, and for James's one in particular, yeah, you're exactly right. He had like this dent and it looked like it was a stress concentration or just a place where it had gotten weak. And I think if he had our guards on the bike before that, it probably would have prevented the dent and that maybe would have prevented the later failure. And I'm not sure, but I mean, it couldn't hurt, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. It's totally hard. You can't necessarily say, yeah, if you had our guards 100%, you wouldn't break a swing arm, but it might deflect it enough or have enough cushion to slide off the rock instead of
Oh,
maybe a
totally.
more square impact or any of that stuff.
Yeah, and all the scratches that you accumulate on your swing arm too, like those are removing thickness from the swing arm, which is kind of bad. They're not that thick. Like if you we're actually going to do a video sometime soon, like we're going to drill into a swing arm and measure it just to show people like how thin and fragile they really are. But not only does it take away some of the thickness from an engineering perspective, it's called a stress concentration. So like this area now that has this groove in it, when you flex the swing arm, the stresses get concentrated there. So like normally the stress is, well distributed through the swing arm. At scratch or that crack or something like that can really enhance how much stress happens in that area and make your swing arm fail like drastically like earlier. And I think that's probably what's happening most of the cases for the endurocross failures. Like those guys are stressing the swing arm a lot, but they'd probably survive, in my opinion, if there wasn't some like initiation point that was already there.
Yeah, interesting. How long, when did you guys start doing this?
This has been going for, I think, a year and a half, 2 years now. Um, we kind of started, so we started the project in college. Our goal was to sell swing arm guards by the midpoint in the year. Um, so we did like I guess it's like probably 4 or 8 months total for like a college year, right? Because there's summer. Um, so it took us like 4 months to uh, do a pre-sale for our first units. And then for the next 4 months, we were like playing catch up and trying to get better at making them pretty much. And
Since
we've
that,
been, yeah, go ahead.
oh, is kind of sourcing production the biggest challenge now at this point?
Yeah. So like right when we graduated, we were like, yeah, let's keep this running. And it's kind of changed over the last 2 years now. We making swing arm guards, I think, what used to be our biggest problem. Um, we would form them ourselves in a tent on the side of my dad's house. Um, so like we were like totally bootstrapping. I mean, when it's like raining and humid out and cold, the forming time would go way up. When it was hot out in the summer, 90 degrees, the forming time would go way down. So that was like some crazy stuff that was going on. And then once you form the part, it's not done. You actually trim it out. So like you form it out of this plastic sheet. Then we had to jigsaw them out of that sheet. Then they go on these special fixtures that we designed. They're these plywood boxes, and we take a hand router and use that fixture to trim them all out. So it's like quite a process. It ended up being for us around 15 minutes per set to make them. And this is not our full-time gig. We kind of sometimes we wish it was, sometimes we're like, eh, but not our full-time gig. So with our regular day jobs, we have every other Friday off. So pretty much every Friday, me or Bryce was in the tent making swing arm guards. So 15 minutes a set, 8 hours, 10 hours, something like that. So we were doing like ideally 32 sets per week. But like our scrap rate was horrible. Like we were probably throwing 10 to 30% of our guards away because they're like just mess them up, that kind of thing. So that was the absolute biggest problem. We couldn't keep up with demand most of the time. And like we were starting to hate it. Like it was just brutal. Like when it's 100 degrees and you're in a tent with an oven, it's like it it turns into a new kind of ball game. So
Yeah.
um, that was kind of the biggest problem then. But now we've actually been able to outsource the production to a company. So now we have, and that's like really early days. We just had our like second or third batch come in. So far, going good, but still a lot of risk ahead. But that's kind of where we're at now.
When you get so you get it in a sheet, like you were saying, and then essentially you got to trim off, and you'd probably just get it down to where, you'd cut a rectangle, and when it would mold out, you're not losing too much on what you cut off. It's not something you can melt back together and press back out into a new sheet, right?
Yeah, and so just like you do lose a decent amount during thermoforming because of the way the sheet is. So we had about a 24-inch by 32-inch sheet, and that would get us one set of swing arm guards. So we'd mold them two at a time, a left and a right for the whatever model. Um, but out of that 24-inch by 32-inch sheet, you're probably throwing away, I don't know, 30% or more. So like ton of scrap there. But for us, honestly, I mean, I don't know, new generation, all like we care about the environment, that kind of stuff. It hurt to throw or recycle all that plastic, even though it was going to a recycler. Like it's just not efficient. But the real thing that hurt us, like from a business perspective, was like it just took too long and it just sucked. So
Yeah.
like the dollars in plastic that were thrown away really weren't that bad. Like HTP is pretty cheap, but like time wise, like that's where things got really expensive for us.
Hmm. Sorry. So you're able to outsource more or less all the production of it now?
Yeah, so now we have all the production outsourced. So we have a vendor for the brackets. We were never able to make those after we graduated college. We actually did make them when we were in college because we had a lot of time and they had the equipment there that we could make it happen. But that was pretty easy to outsource. But then the swing arm guards themselves, we now have the production of those all outsourced. Like we get stickers outsourced. They all come to our residential house, like we operate out of a house, and then we pack them up in boxes and ship them out. We do direct orders, and then we also do like bulk orders to dealers and that kind of stuff. So we, have some different packaging. We throw them all in different boxes and ship them out.
Nice. I would imagine hard enduro is probably your main market.
I think so. I'm pretty sure that's almost all of it, but I think we're starting to expand a little bit, and we want to expand some. Seems like the hard enduro guys really get it and they want them. But then there's people that ask different kind of questions, like they're asking like, "Oh, does like dirt rub beneath on the backside?" They're like worried about scuffing their swing arm. We
Right.
get those questions pretty often, and I think that that's probably not hard enduro guys. Sometimes we get weirder questions like, "Does it affect the flex characteristics of our swing arms?" I don't know. Maybe those are moto guys or something like that. But so I'm hoping that we're starting to branch out, but I think it's mostly hard enduro guys, which is not a bad place to be. It's a growing market, I think.
Yeah. Well, the people worried about the flex characteristics of their swing arm are the same people that are, spending thousands of dollars to shave grams off a road bike while they're 30 pounds overweight.
Yeah, no kidding, right? I mean, your body and like us as riders is by far the most important tool for getting faster, for having more fun. Like, can't be overstated enough.
Yeah. And I'm making a little bit sarcasm, but on a lot of levels, it is true. I mean, I got the 24 TE and going into that, like, not all, but there was some talk about a stiff chassis and all that.
Yeah.
And I think we were talking about it at one of the races. And it's the best bike I've ever ridden. Minus maybe the brakes, but honestly, they're not terrible. They're good or better than the Maguros were for off my 21. And
Yeah, so we were
shout out to
we were talking
Brembo.
at we were talking at Donner
Yeah.
and last year, and I was thinking about buying the 24 300 XCW that I ended up getting. And I remember you saying it had a stiff frame, and it honestly, I was almost like, oh man, maybe I'll wait for 25. But I'm glad that I ignored your comment.
Yeah,
The bike is sick. I love
yeah,
that bike.
yeah, I ended up ignoring my own comment too. Because at the end of the day, it's like, it's probably not something I can notice. Like, yeah, sure, maybe Tristan's on a 25 and he can tell. I can't tell. Like, there's so much of a gap between me riding the machine to its ability and like it's all me. It's rider air, it's skill, it's all that stuff. I got a long way to go before stuff
The
like that
bikes are
matter
just
too much.
the bikes are just capable of so much. Like you look at things that Tristan and Billy and Manny are doing, and like these bikes are so capable. And then you look at people like I don't know, he hasn't done it in a while, but like Jordan Ashburn coming out on a KDX 200 and
Yeah.
like just clearing people's clocks. Like, I mean, he made the final moto, I think, at that TKO that he went to. And it just goes to show you like focus on being a better rider, being more fit. And I think having fun is a big part of like doing well too on a dirt bike, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think the fun part comes into um it's going to add to the consistency, which is going to make the big changes over time. Because if you hate what you're doing, at some point you're just going to stop doing it.
Yeah, everybody stops doing what they hate, right?
Right.
But
So if you really
yeah.
love it and you find ways to have fun, and then also, I don't remember who it was. I think it was a trials coach out of Australia. Um, put up a post one time where he said, for the most part, if you can go out and kind of segment your riding time, but spend 20, 10% of it warming up, spend 15% on a specific drill, spend 25% of it on a section or like a hill climb, or change depending on what discipline you're doing. And then the rest of that ride is just fun. Like,
Yeah.
just go fool around and do whatever you want to do. But then you're over time, like all that time spent with the deliberate attention to improving something specific, it's going to pay big dividends eventually.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know, the more I've gotten into the hard enduro, and I think the trials guys have this perspective a lot more too, is it's just such a different way of training. Like when I was growing up, and I mean I raced a little bit of like cross country and stuff like that, but mostly just rode a lot, went trail road and stuff like that. Like I never thought of things like segmenting my time on the bike or like really doing drills or anything like that. It was like show up, ride, sometimes ride fast, and then like go have some burritos.
Yeah.
And I think the trials influencing the hard enduro so much is where like a lot of this structure comes from. And I think it's kind of cool. It brings a new aspect to the sport that's like I think a lot different than than a lot of people kind of do in related to dirt bikes, right?
Yeah, I had a similar experience riding. Like, I grew up doing athletics, team sports, and I never thought when I switched to riding of taking those same ideals of how to practice the team sport or even an individual sport, but more in like school stuff, and applying that to dirt biking, because none of my friends did it. And all we would do is
Hmm.
just go ride. And some days we're like, oh, we're going to go ride the hardest thing we could find. But that would literally still consist of doing it one time, getting through it the fastest, best way possible, and
Yeah.
hoping no one saw you if you fell down. Right. And
Yeah.
then that was it. You're, oh, I made it. And then you wait for everybody and you regroup and you go and then drink some beers after the ride.
Yep.
And that was it forever. And then, yeah, I think it was about 2 years ago when I started meeting some people who were just higher level riders, and then starting Enduro Method and working from the fitness side, but then getting to know some of the pro riders and working with them, where I started to really understand how they trained. Like, I remember doing Dana and I went and did a camp with Destry Abbott in 2018. It was like one of those Christmas camps.
Hmm.
And we were hanging out in the back patio area talking one evening, and Cooper and Destry taking us out to like the 303 area where they kind of ride. There's a bunch of it's kind of where Roper does like his trials out there.
Yeah.
But Coop had like a hard enduro loop and some easier enduro loops and stuff like that at the time. And I think they've expanded on it since. But I remember asking him, I'm like, you just come out here and like you ride turn tracks and then you go to the motocross track over there and then you have your enduro cross track and then you have your sand track and you have some hill climb stuff. I was like, where do you go ride for fun? Or like, where's your 50-mile loops at? And he's like, I don't do 50-mile loops. Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about? It's like, wait, so all of your riding, it like blew me away. I just had no idea. But then as, you know, I talk to more and more people and figure out it's like, it's just totally different thing to train, like ride specifically and train for the sport of riding, racing, hard enduro, enduro cross, enduros, whatever, versus, you know, just riding trails for fun, single track, go explore the mountains.
Oh yeah, it's like a completely different thing, and it kind of blew me away. Like same thing when I learned that these guys were just turning motos in the turn track, and it kind of took away some of that like grandeur of like, oh, you get to like be a pro dirt bike rider. It's like, man, like it's homework. Like these guys are out burning, hundreds and hundreds of laps on turn tracks, on, like you said, sand tracks. Like they are practicing. It's just like, going back to that team sport kind of stuff. You got to build all those building blocks. And yeah, it's interesting. Something that I haven't done, or I still struggle to do as like a rider. It's hard to practice for me because I like to just go out and have fun. But it's been interesting. I think one of the biggest keys is you have to go out alone in order to get those good like quality reps in. Like as soon as there's other people involved, like you end up sitting around and joking and like waiting for them or they're waiting for you. Like you kind of have to be able to go out alone and put your head down.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I've found that the amount of people I ride with has gone down in the
Yeah.
last 2 years. And it's not to say that I won't seek that out sometimes, but I just have to go into knowing, okay, we're gonna go for 60 miles, we're gonna spend 8, 10 hours on the bike. Heart rate's gonna always stay below a low 120. We're gonna stop at every top of every hill, wait for everybody, we're
Yeah.
gonna chat a lot, eat. You know, it's more of a social event.
Yep.
I don't look at that as like training or riding. But I've really actually enjoyed that progression into trying to do that more. And
Hmm.
I do like exactly what you said, because I have a couple friends who are pretty into it around here. So it's been really fun. And when it's just two of us, it's amazing. Like we
Yeah.
go out, hit some motos, have a blast, even though we don't talk. It's great.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
like we're putting our head down
yeah.
and going after
Yeah,
it.
talk afterwards, hang out. But even three people, and then maybe even get up to four, but everybody still wants to do on the same page, and it just changes the entire atmosphere.
Yeah, I've had a lot of similar feelings, and it's kind of a weird struggle where sometimes when I go out for those 8 or 10 hour long, 50-mile rides, you almost get a little bit bored, right? You're like itching. You're like, I want to push myself. I want to ride hard, and you kind of then have to go play around some or whatever. But then if I go ride like alone too much, then I want to go back and ride some big day with friends and stuff like that. So I think it's all balance. But I recently went down to the King of the Motos. I don't ride too much hard enduro stuff around where uh, my home is. We're in Livermore, California, um, or I don't have like many people to train with around here. So I went down to King of the Motos and like rode with Dylan, Psycho Enduro, and Cody and some of the or Cody Baux pieces, not Webb. I just butchered your name probably, but a bunch of those guys. And it was super fun. And like all those guys wanted to race. So like if they get to the bottom of the canyon, everybody would take off. And it was like an actual race. And I was like, man, this is actually really fun. I want to do this more.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So
Where is Livermore?
Livermore is like an hour east of San Francisco, something like that.
Okay.
So it's kind of like Northern California. A lot of the places we ride are like out in the Sierra when the conditions are good up there. And then I have like a OHV park near my house. It's like 30 minutes away. Um, tons of huge hill climbs and stuff like that. It's pretty fun. But yeah.
Nice. I grew up in, do you know where Auberry, California is?
Barry or Auburn?
Auberry.
No, I don't
A
know.
little foothill town, literally like central state almost. So north, south, east, west.
Hmm.
Fresno, closest big city,
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
but up in the Sierras from there.
Okay, that's sick.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool spot.
Did you ride a lot of dirt bikes while you're out here, or not so much?
I rode when I was a kid, um, and then kind of when high school hit, kind of quit riding. And when I
Yeah,
rode as a kid, like nothing crazy. I think I was trying to get my dad to take me to the motocross track, and he was not into it.
yeah, that's fair. You see what those kids are doing out there. It's like, oh, that's scary.
Yeah, so that's why I blame dad why I still don't jump, can't jump.
Yeah, you get like this far off the ground,
Yeah,
like 2 inches, and you're like,
killed my future.
big one. So
Yeah, I remember I
how
went
did you
to
guys
one.
like,
Oh, sorry.
oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Trouble podcast. How did you guys like start the Enduro Method thing? And like you mentioned, you went to a couple camps. Like, did you see these people like putting to practice this new methodology for training? And you're like, I want to bring this to more dirt bikers, or was it way before that? You're just like, I want to bring fitness to dirt bikers.
Yeah, so it originally I was so I moved to Jackson Hole, Wyoming in 2006, I think, and kind of been in the gym my entire life. Like not necessarily to do bodybuilding, but it's just always been associated with the sports and I've always
Mhm.
enjoyed lifting.
What were
Um,
your sports back in the day?
Football, basketball, baseball through high school.
So like all of them.
Yeah, and then a little bit of football in college, but I wasn't there to go to school.
Mm.
I never finished. I would have been honestly been better off. So I had really good opportunities in high school. We had an amazing football team.
Hmm.
And I was a starting quarterback junior, senior year. Junior year, we went one valley, like as far as we could go. Senior year, we are looking to repeat. I got hurt the first game,
Oh,
missed 4 games. It was a helmet to the knee. It wasn't structural, but a big hematoma and like just
sure.
had some issues with that. So missed kind of half the season. And then when I came back, just had a terrible rest of the season. So all of the prospects of good D1 schools that I was potentially looking at going to kind of fell
Yeah, that's a
through.
bummer.
And then we had a decent basketball team, but we weren't known for basketball. But actually, if I
Hmm.
would have been able to pick basketball, would have been the sport that I was more
Oh, really?
passionate about. But I didn't have the opportunities to go to a D1 and being a athletic kid who potentially had a attitude a little bit. I thought there's no way that I could not go to a D1 school on a full ride or partial or something. And so,
D1 or nothing.
yeah. So with that attitude, going into school as a walk-on and not having the backing of people keeping me in line academically, I shortly
Mm,
kind of fell through in that area. So was
yeah,
at
gotcha.
Fresno State when I walked on there for quarterback. David Carr was still a senior. I don't know if you're familiar with football. He went on to play in the
Yeah.
NFL.
Yeah, no,
And
he's legit.
yeah, after being at practice one day, we stayed after and we were throwing some routes to the wide receivers, and I was just like, okay, I was pretty good, but this is like it's another level.
This is a bigger pond.
It's a bigger freaking pond. So I kind of moved positions around. I went to free safety, but I'm not like 4-3 fast for crying out loud. And then outside linebacker, and that might have been a good spot, but it was just, yeah, I had a bunch of other areas that I was spending most of my time, which was late nights and late mornings.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, long tangent there. But when I moved to Jackson, so I've always been into lifting. When I got there was this gym that I kind of heard about, but he didn't advertise, and it was very uh hardcore, right? Everybody kind of talks about it. And a lot of like the professional mountaineers went there
Okay.
and kind of extreme sport athletes. And I was like, well, I'm kind of into that. Like I like doing hard things. I don't want to get like bodybuilder. That's not why I'm going to the
Hmm.
gym. I just want
Just
to be
like a functional fitness kind of mentality.
totally, I just want to be strong, but I want to go play outside and not carry around, a bunch of extra weight, whether it be fat or muscle.
Hmm.
And so went to this gym called Mountain Athlete. And from there, it's very crossfitty in a
Sure.
sense, like that style of training.
Mm.
Just we did a lot of strength work. We did a lot of hard shit, heavy breathing, heavy weight, loaded runs, carries, rucks. And during all that time of kind of learning the methodology and then progressing to a point, he started this other company called Military Athlete.
Okay.
And so he would got to the point where he'd have big time special forces guys come in for a weekend seminar and all that stuff. And
Mm.
it was a great experience, really cool to be a part of it. I coached for him for a little bit there, but I actually found like through that, I was like, I don't want to be a coach. I just didn't have the experience that I felt I needed to train people who were just like monsters in their field. I felt very
Gotcha.
unqualified.
Yeah.
Like I knew the gym, but I didn't know enough to have the confidence to be like, yeah, you're like a Navy SEAL. I'm not going to tell you what to do.
You're gonna whoop my
Yeah.
ass.
So I kind of stepped back from the coaching, but just kept being an athlete more or less. And then through that, started competing CrossFit because I was treating the gym as a sport
Sure.
already and wanted to see where I stacked up against these people who are now starting to blow up on social media and YouTube and all that
Mm.
stuff. So started competing for the games in 2012. Never made it that far, but went the step before multiple times. So pretty high level there. And during that time, I was kind of riding in the summers, but
Gotcha.
training was like predominant for CrossFit. And so the time I was spending on the bike was fun, but it wasn't, there was no focus. It was just like we were talking about going
Yeah.
out riding with your buddies. As I was kind of getting to the point where I didn't know if I wanted to compete in CrossFit anymore, I really started thinking about, hey, I'd love to do a dirt bike race. Like it's been something I've always wanted to do. I've never done one. And so I think I signed up for like a Cedra, which is it's kind of like a hare and hound, but it's the Idaho
Sure.
series.
Uh-huh.
And I might even mess that up. But anyways, it's not a hare and hound race, but kind of similar. And it was out near Boise. And I remember doing it. I think it went in B class and it was like a 110-mile race. I think it was 3 different loops. And Kate Shade, I don't know if you know that name.
No, no.
Kate's Real Food Bars.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. So she's a monster dirt biker. And at the time she was still racing. So I went with her and her boyfriend. And Nate wasn't riding, so he was pitting. But I remember coming into the pits after the first loop and I blew right by him and he's like waving his arms at me. And I had like 40 miles in, like this death stare and just getting annihilated, right? I still had like 60 miles to go. And so go back out, finally finish the race, get all the whole thing, 105 miles or whatever. And as I'm pulling in on like not to the finish line, but come back in and see everybody down there, I remember seeing the Red Bull truck like drive away. And I'm like, oh man, I wonder what happened. Like somebody must have got hurt. I'm out here still racing. Like I think I'm doing pretty good. And of course,
They're
Taylor
done.
finished up like 2 hours ago or whatever, and they're just gone. They've done the award ceremony. But I just, yeah, I pulled in, just annihilated.
So
And
you're like obviously a monster in the gym, super fit from all this CrossFit stuff, and still the dirt bike is just working you.
just totally different because I wasn't I just wasn't proficient. I just wasn't a good
Uh,
rider.
you're
And
fighting yourself, right?
exactly for 10, 105 miles.
Yeah, those races. Did they have like the third loop too, where like that was the beat down loop, right? Like
Yep.
they go around one loop, two loop, and then they're like, all right, all the people that are left, like this is hammer time. You're fucked.
Yeah. And I just got like the cutoff to make the third loop.
Ah, nice.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so made anyways, got back and was just speechless. Like literally, like, okay, I think I finished second to last in my class. Um, Blown away. I was multiple things, humbled, uh, just amazed at what other people could do on a dirt bike. Cause I wasn't terrible like at home. in the small
Hmm.
fish, small pond in Idaho. Like I could do all the things my buddies could do,
Yeah.
but nobody was going out and doing races. We were just trail riding on the weekend. So that opened like that started the like, holy shit, I love to dirt bike. I want to do more races. And then so that was that fall. I think the next summer, Dana and I signed up for the Idaho City 100, which was more uh, like a timed sections, so you'd have your
Yep. Yep.
transfer
No, I,
section,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
that style. And same thing, enter B class, but I'd spent some time like trying to prepare and just kind of learn how to turn faster and stuff like that. And I think I was in the top, I honestly can't remember. I was in the top three in B class overall
Okay.
for both days. And I was just super stoked. I was like, okay, so if I put some time in, this is just like any other sport. If you
Yeah.
practice,
You can get better.
learn. Yep. And so from the dirt bike side, that kind of got me hooked.
Hmm.
And quickly, what came apparent is as I started to get just a little bit more efficient on the bike and transfer the fitness from the gym and all the strength and the work capacities
Hmm.
I had from CrossFit, I just started to make these big jumps in what I
Yeah.
could do and the ability of just picking the bike up multiple times, doing hard things multiple times throughout a ride, recovering faster, um, less risk. You can never mitigate injury, but definitely less
Yep.
risk of injury just being stronger. You're in weirder positions and just safer, easier to get out of them. And as we were kind of doing more races and more of our friends, they started asking, what do I do in the gym? How do
Hmm.
I train for dirt biking? And so that kind of started the thought process of like, well, what's different and how does it apply to dirt biking? Because
Hmm.
there's definitely some things that don't transfer, or I
Yeah.
wouldn't say don't transfer, but it's just like anything. It all depends on where your goals are for how much time you need to spend there, right?
Sure.
At some point, getting too strong is going to be a detriment,
Yeah. Yeah. You carrying
but
around extra muscle. You're like, burning all your uh, red blood, yeah, burning all your oxygen, right? Because you got so much
right.
muscle to feed.
Yeah, and the time that it takes to get to that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wouldn't have thought of it that way, right?
Yeah,
You spend all
the
this time in the
investment
gym.
that it takes to get there, where there's just a lower barrier to entry to get to pretty good. But
Hmm.
just like anything else, right? The higher you get, the longer these like small percentile increases,
Yep.
that shit just starts to take more and more dedication, more, and that time just stretches out.
Yeah, it went from
So,
days to get to that next level to months to years, right? Where you're just working to get that last percent.
right. And that stuff's got to be at like top of the pyramid of whatever your objective is, right?
Yep.
If you're spending all that time to get to this super big jacks over here, but you're trying to be like really good at racing,
Your priorities are
yeah, they're not aligned, let's say. So that's been a really cool thing that I feel like I'm still learning constantly on and have a long way to go, but have a good foothold now with myself, doing it to myself, and then having other people to work with who are riding at a very high level, who are riding in the
Mhm.
middle, who are just starting. And some of the basics of that are like getting stronger, but again, not spending so much time that is detracting from what you want to do ultimately.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things I think I underestimated in the beginning was the amount of conditioning required.
For dirt biking in general?
Um, yes, and specific for hard enduro.
Yeah, that's totally
Um,
fair.
it's an endurance sport. Like there's
100%.
a massive amount of anaerobic moments,
Hmm.
but no one is out there, even the best in the world, in an anaerobic state for 4 hours.
No, you can't. Like it's
Right.
impossible.
Right. And so I think one of the hard things for people to realize, because I would say amateurs in general, which I still put myself in that category, but you'll hear these stories of like, oh, I had a heart rate of 190 for 4 hours. And it's like, nope.
bullshit.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure you had a maximum heart rate of 190 for a couple of minutes somewhere in there. And then you probably forgot about right after that when you sat on the side of the trail for 10 minutes.
Pulled your helmet off and were like dumping water on your face, right?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, literally that was it. It was just realizing that Dana and I both, but from myself from 2009, before that, I would just say was more general strength training, pretty classic, like whether it was through school or, I was looking up like muscle fitness magazine routines and doing those, or like found Mark Rippett toe book and I was like, holy shit, this is it. And then do that for 8 weeks. You're like, what's next? So kind of just the self-taught way. And then from '09 up was being coached, coaching, training with the cool thing about CrossFit is you have to learn a lot of different disciplines. Like you can't just be really strong. You got to be pretty aerobically fit. You got to have a massive amount of work capacity. You got to be really freaking strong for your size. And you got to be fairly gymnastic-y, like not super technical, but a decent amount.
You got to be able to do those movements, right?
Yeah. A lot of mobility. And then Olympic lifting, like I was at a level where I could qualify for the US national meet and the US Open in Olympic lifting. I wouldn't have been on the A platform. I would have been on like the C platform, but I could have competed in that sport without that being my primary focus, because that was the level you had to be able to get to be competitive to try and get to the games or wherever. And so like learning, I've kind of equated hard enduro to CrossFit in many ways. Like you got to be pretty good at trials style, right? It really helps if you're fast in the desert. If you can jump and have that motocross background, you're going to be just fast in the woods, good corners, all that stuff. I don't know. There's all these different things you can pick from, and like the best in the world, they're not the best in the world at any one of those particular things, but they're really good at almost all of them.
Yeah, and you look at the way they cross train too, right? To be good at all those disciplines. A lot of them started in trials, but like Tristan started in motocross, but then they all have to expand their capacity by like going and practicing. So those guys are all at the moto tracks on some amount of days per week. They're all riding trials some amount. They're all going to turn tracks. And then they also do hard enduro, like pure hard enduro. But like, yeah, it is interesting. Like you have to be like a motocross racer. I doubt that they're out on a trials bike, but a hard enduro, like you have to do all these different things.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's been really fun. I have a blast doing it. I love the training aspect. I love seeing improvements. And the fitness side is, I probably don't talk about that part about it as much because that's something that I've just been doing forever. And so it's not like the new and novel stuff for me is like, holy shit, like, dude, go do motos to get better at hard enduro. Like, who knew, right?
Yeah,
like
it's
the
freaking
gym stuff. I'm like,
revolutionary.
yeah. I've been doing that forever. I just do that. I don't want to talk about it. But yeah, no, it's been huge. So with that kind of programming, like that is the forefront. It's like it's literally for being better at dirt biking or preparing you to be the best at dirt biking. We're not going to spend a shit ton of time trying to hypertrophy cycles and get massive. We're just going to get stronger. Ideally, by doing this, you're going to be able to lean out a little bit, gain some lean muscle mass, improve your mobility. But that's like I have a bunch of pet peeves on stuff. One is like the mobility craze, because so back in the day when I was doing CrossFit after my first year, and all these little companies were starting to come up with like, hey, get better at gymnastics, start with like, learn to be a D1 gymnast. And it's super appealing, right? Because you're like, fuck, I want to be a D1 gymnast. But
why not?
You're right. But if like I still want to compete in CrossFit, this is now just taking away from the time I could spend doing the sport to like go back 4 years to learn the correct progression for ring muscle ups.
Sure.
Like, I can already do ring muscle ups. I just need to get better at them in the context of CrossFit, not in the context of being judged on body
Yeah,
position.
yeah. 1 point for your toes being not, pointed, right?
Yeah, totally.
From Russian judge number 3.
Right. And so that's where like the mobility stuff, it's like, yeah, you want to be mobile. I would almost make the case that you want to improve and have a mobility for life more than you do on a dirt bike. Like if you can get in
Yeah,
a good hinge position, get your elbows up without your back blowing up,
pretty solid.
how much more mobility do you need? Like,
Well, it's also like the injury prevention like avenue, right? Like when you
right,
get into those, you ragdoll a little bit off a thing, like you're not tweaking yourself out, right?
totally. But at the end of the day too, it's like, are you gonna try and train to prevent that? Like right?
Yeah.
You have no idea what's gonna happen when you do get an accident. So being generally fit, strong, aerobically good, that's gonna be your best prevention. If you're really worried about not crashing, it's like this might not be the sport for you.
No, it's totally the case, right? And I mean, you get better at dirt bike riding, and I think you get better at crashing too. Like
Oh
go
yeah.
crash some, and you're gonna learn how to like take a roll and kind of figure things out. Like guys that are good at dirt bike ride, like they'll crash like crazy, but then or not crash like crazy. Most of the guys that are really good at dirt biking crash rarely, I think. And then when they do crash, they have like enough skill and strength, dexterity, all these things to like pretty much land on their feet and like be okay. Unless they're trying stuff that's like a little like way outside their comfort zone.
Right.
But yeah. But
That's
like where
good.
did like Enduro Method, the business, come from? Like you guys had this idea, obviously you had the skill set, etc. Was there a scary moment when you had to put in like money or the work or anything like that and you weren't sure it was going to work out, or it just was a natural progression? You guys were like, oh, it's.
Pretty natural progression. It's still scary moments. Like I want to put out something that's good and viable and works and that people are stoked with. It From our side, like the difference from you guys a little bit is like almost no overhead
Yeah,
for
yeah,
us.
which is
Like,
something I'm envious of a little bit.
yeah.
Like we're running pretty low overhead, but like man, that software based stuff is like, oh, that's where it's at.
Yeah. Because for us, it was literally just figuring out a platform to deliver it on, which is,
Mm,
it's like a monthly fee. And then creating workouts and putting it out there. The hardest part for us, honestly, is marketing and advertising.
yeah, which is a hard thing to do. We're struggling with it now, and we'll probably always struggle with it because it's not us, right? But like putting yourself out there, social media, all that stuff, it seems like a black box to me.
Yeah, same feeling. Like we have a gym brick and mortar location here in Driggs. We've been open 10 years. It's fantastic. And it's like the differences of having a gym, seeing people in person, being a part of the community. They get to know you. They hear about you through friends who go to the gym. You meet them. Like there's just such an easier way to meet and get people to believe you, trust in you.
Yeah.
You do what you
It's that
say.
word of mouth, right? Like the
Yeah,
guy down the street tells you, man, like this gym is awesome. Josh and Dane are like the bomb. Like, go check them out. Like, instantly you want to go do it. But when you see some post on Instagram, you're just like, man, like one in a million, right?
right. And that, like, I failed speech class like 4 times at Fresno State. Like I would go to class until I had to get in front of class to give a speech, and then that would be the last day I'd attend that class for the semester.
You just leave. You're
I
like,
would just stop. I'm like, I'm out.
done.
So not a big fan of public speaking by any stretch, but as I've actually felt that I was competent enough to share, and I
Mhm.
had things that I was like passionate about, that became a lot easier. And so through fitness and like doing it myself, but I had to do it myself first before I
Mhm.
felt like I had that right almost to help somebody else do it.
Yeah.
But the gym was a huge part of that. But the hard part of that on social media is you're just constantly just putting yourself out there.
Yeah. Yeah. In more and more extreme ways, right? Like,
Right.
things that you wouldn't normally do, or trying to play yourself up or that kind of thing, right?
Right. And the
So,
fact that like most of the stuff that you actually need to do is not the stuff that gets attention on Instagram or
oh,
Facebook
totally, yeah.
or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny. So yeah, the advertising and marketing is definitely our biggest issue. I think we're getting better at it. Like even doing the podcast, meeting new people,
Yeah.
that's been really cool. And then of course just going to the races. Like it's been so cool now to show up at a race and you see like 20, 30 people that you don't see for a year, you know?
Yeah. The races, especially the hard enduro community. I used to race like local hair scramble stuff, and like most people would show up, and maybe this was just us, I don't know, but people would show up, you'd race, you go home. Like I didn't talk to that many people at the races. The hard enduros, though, like it's been so fun because the community's gotten so strong. Like so many people know each other. Everybody's awesome. Like even if you're competing at like as hard as you possibly can, everybody's chill and like wants to hang out, wants to be friends. So it's been like one of the coolest communities to be a part of. And it's so fun showing up to the first round of the year and going to talk to all your buddies that you haven't seen in a year. Everybody's messing around, right? Oh, you got the new bike, this and that. Like it's so much fun.
Yeah. What are some of your plans for Crosslinked components with the new year?
Yeah, like this year, so like the big push at the end towards the end of last year was getting outsourcing figured out. Like now that we have a source for swing arm guards, like where we're not humping, doing literally all the manual labor, we're now focusing on how do we scale this company? How do we get it big enough to where, um, maybe there's an inkling that this could be a full-time job, right? Like we at least want to have that opportunity, even if we don't take it. So that's kind of the goal. And that means getting a lot more mature about like spending and all these things, trying to dial in the business, uh, making everything systematic. Like, how do we order things on time that we were not out of them? Like, we're constantly out of this and that. We're working on that a ton. So that's like all the behind the scenes stuff that nobody like, right. You're not going to post that on Instagram. Nobody's going to care. But some of the more flashy stuff, the stuff that we're excited about, we've got a couple new products coming, and that's pretty fun. I've been working on rim protectors. So I went and sold my bike recently and noticed that the rims were destroyed, kind of like my swing arm. And I was like, okay, how do I cover those up? So I went and bought some stickers, covered them up, got the bike sold. And then I was like, all right, is there any way that we can make this thing like make something to protect that? So I'm working on something, but it's like in the churn right now. We're doing multiple versions and trying to dial it in. And then another thing on the close horizon that I haven't talked about yet is the oil system on these new bikes is something that I'm a little scared of. Um, and I've heard a little bit on forums, stuff like that, like oil pumps failing. When looked into it a little bit, oil pumps are actually like ubiquitous on two-stroke scooters. So like the million two-stroke scooters that are in Vietnam and like all these other places, like they're all oil injected, and the oil pumps go forever. Like they're bulletproof. So it's like, why are people, and not a lot of people, but why are people having oil pumps fail on their dirt bikes? And a lot of people have said dust is the main reason. So I'm looking at my oil cap right after going to ride, and there's like a bunch of dust in there, and I'm like taking it off, and I'm like watching it drop in the oil tank. And I'm like, okay. So we're working on something to stop that from happening pretty much. It's not a complicated product, but working on that. But then also our kind of methodology for product development, stuff like that, is like we want to functionally test stuff. It's like back in the day for our swing arm guards, like we use this huge swing testing machine to like swing the swing arms at a gigantic boulder and like physically prove that our swing arm guards held on, they lasted a long time, etc. Like it was a very physical test, and that's like kind of the engineer side of us. Like we like that stuff. So like we're gonna do some stress testing of oil pumps. We're gonna like, I bought some oil pumps. I took one apart the other day, looked at how it worked. They're like incredibly simple, but there's also like precise components in there that have to do their thing. So we're gonna like rig up a setup and we're going to pump oil through the thing continuously and then dump some dirt in it and see if we can break them and kind of dissect that kind of thing. So those are kind of the things that are on the near term horizon.
Nice. Yeah, I've definitely dropped some dirt in my oil.
It's hard not to. Like you got to take that cap off and there's dirt up in there and like what do you do? Like you got to take it off. You got to put the oil in the thing. So I don't know.
Yeah. Awesome.
So that's kind of the near term. What's on the forefront for Enduro Method? Like is there anything that's new coming, or is it just kind of like we're working the workouts, we're doing that kind of thing?
Yeah, a lot of well, I'd say more one of the bigger things I'm trying to figure out how to solve is it's hard to, unless somebody wants to do one-on-one training, which we do, but it's way more expensive. How do you segment like people who have specific goals throughout the season? So
Gotcha.
I want to build out a more robust plan, more plans for different things. Is
Gotcha.
one way.
So I saw you guys had like that, like 4 or 6 or whatever, however many week, like hard enduro prep plan, right?
Yeah.
So stuff kind of like that.
Yeah, because that works really well because it builds specifically to the race, and you could recycle that for
sure.
And then you could literally put your own exercises in, keep the same rep schemes, and repeat it, and it'd be almost new. Because the ideas of it and the methodologies for energy system training is going to stay true, right? From a novelty perspective, I'd like to have another plan that builds on that one, another plan that builds on that, just so you could run things and just try new things too, because there's no reason to not, right? Like just explore within that range a little bit, keep the intensities or ideas the same. But I would like to do that for different styles of races because it does make a difference. You know, a 4-hour hard enduro is going to be a little bit different than a 2-a-day race, like a knockdown
totally,
format, which is going to be, you know, so having more plans available there. I'd also like to make some plans that are not specific to racing.
Okay, just more general fitness for trail riding, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then it is hard too because you know some people have access to a gym, some don't. So being able to do some plans that are maybe real minimal, you know, minimal equipment, but then have a pretty good progression to them. Because the only hard part with the monthly kind of training is it's hard to put progressions in. I can put progressions in for 4 weeks, but I gotta
but then like the people are recycling in at any random point, right?
Yeah, exactly. So somebody could come in for day one who's never really been in the gym and like show up on week 6 of an 8-week progression where it's actually getting really hard. It's like, hey, day one. So I really look at like what we do with our monthly plan as like general physical preparedness. And if you do that training, like you're going to be pretty much ready to go in any direction you want. And then from there, if you had an event, had a race or a big weekend or Costa Rica unlimited trip or something you wanted to be really prepared for, you could step out of that and do this build up that would really be specific to the thing you're trying to accomplish.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've been doing the program now like on and off for a couple months, and it's been super interesting. The thing I struggle most with the program is the time. It's for me, you know, a lot of times in the evening, I've got like 30, 45 minutes and I want to, you know, crush something out. So something it might be interesting would be like a fast paced, like, I don't know. That's just an idea.
Oh, 100%. I would love to have a whole nother track that was like 45 minutes or less, honestly.
That would be sick, right? Because like sometimes I look at the workout and I'm like, oh, why even start if I can't finish, or if I can't do each piece, right? So that gets a little tough sometimes. But yeah, I've been loving the program. It just adds so much like different movements. And I noticed like right when I started, I had lost a lot of athleticism that I used to have just being able to control my body. you know, in these kind of, I mean, they're basic, like kind of exercise movements, but like, you know, I'm all wobbly and stuff. And it's like helped to regain a lot of that just through the program.
Nice. Yeah, I think there would be, I've thought about that already. Like, I wonder if just being that GPP, like, because especially too, like if you have to watch the videos, if you're unfamiliar with the movements, sometimes you got to go back
Yeah.
and
It takes a
watch
while.
them. It could be an hour, 15, hour and a half. And like, obviously that'll get cleaned up because we do want to keep them in that 60-minute window. But then if I go do it, like I don't have to watch a video, I just go do it. So it's kind of way faster.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm
It's
like,
hard
oh
to,
yeah, of
hard
course
to
you could
know.
get this in 60 minutes.
People are out there for like 3 hours having a marathon. Yeah. The other thing that I had, that I was wondering what your input would be on, you go out and ride a dirt bike in a hard enduro situation and the arm pump feeling, right? Like, you know it, I know it, everybody knows it. And, you know, I've gone through fitter points in life, unless that doesn't go away. I can't see it. Like, I don't know if Tristan Hart is feeling the same way, but like, what's a workout that you could do that like activates the forearm, but it's also like, I don't know what the, you know, that's something to think on because man, I would pay money to be able to work that out.
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions on it. I don't have any actual scientifically based solutions.
We need to work on that. I want research papers.
Definitely aerobic fitness will help, right? Just having a
Yeah.
good aerobic base. Having a strong grip will help. Now, some people, what I always hear is like, well, I don't want to make the muscles bigger because then I get arm pumps. Like, it's just not how it works. Again, at some point, you could make your forearms so big that they're less efficient. But like that
Well, I
would
don't think
take,
anybody's there.
right, that would take so long, and the rest of you, like you would know, you'd be like, oh shit, like I passed the point of efficiency.
Yeah. Popeye.
Because what I kind of always look to is like rock climbers, right? Like their entire sport is grip work.
Yeah.
So how do they train it? Well, they train short, really intense stuff like campus boards, moon boards, stuff like that. They go on long duration climbs, which is their like zone 2 aerobic work for their, you know, sport. They do everything in between. So the same way that you would approach energy system training for a cyclist, for a dirt biker, for whatever, right? You're kind of hitting everything on the spectrum. The biggest thing I think is that with that is going to be just the being more efficient in body position on the bike.
Really?
Like, because at least for me, and then the other part is how much you can ride, right? The more you can get on the bike, like I can't ride during the winter, but the last 2 years, so last year and this year, I've had a potato cellar where I can ride trials.
Yeah, seen that.
And I mean, I ride, well, almost every day if I can, but 3 to 4 days a week now all winter. And so my grip is so much better. It's almost, I don't want to say it's a non-factor because when you're pushing yourself to a limit, like you will in a race, at some point you're going to pump up regardless. Like you can even listen to super, you know, the
Supercross guys.
Supercross. Like if they push past the point that they can basically stay out of threshold, as soon as they cross that line for too long, they'll start to pump up.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, and that's just like biophysics, you know, something like that, right? Like there's some limit. I guess I don't have great access to like the place, and I think a lot of people have the same thing. Like I feel like the aerobic base is there and that kind of thing. But man, when I get in that hard enduro situation, I'm climbing the canyon. I just want to be able to train for it, while I'm not actually riding.
Yeah, and I think like working on breathing during those situations
Really
massive, because I know for myself, like I get in those spots and I just quit breathing. Like I hold my breath. When multiple things happen, you squeeze the shit out of the handlebars or controls. Yeah, super tight. Because it's like I think it's 30 or 40% of maximal grip strength, and you start to occlude blood flow.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, because you're like squeezing all the veins and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So being able to relax more and breathe better is going to really help.
Yeah, I think most people all have the same feeling where like you start the race, you pump up, and then you start to relax and things start to go away, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of find your flow. So
Yeah. But there would be like something like dead hangs are a great way to increase grip strength.
there's that feeling though, and now maybe I'm just arguing with you, but like it's like that feeling, I dead hang, I can't seem to replicate that feeling. Like my grip definitely fails, right? At some point you can't hang on anymore. But there's like it's almost like if you climb a really hard hill on a mountain bike or something, right? Like your legs are in that, I guess, anaerobic state, right? Like they're like at lactate threshold, but I can't seem to replicate my forearms being at lactate threshold like any other way. You
Oh,
know
I
what I
see.
mean?
Yeah, yeah. Specifically, like just to the, yeah, right in here. Yeah.
Yeah, your forearms. Like strength is one thing, right? Like, obviously I'm preaching to the choir, but like the threshold work with your forearm, it seems like you only get it on a dirt bike, and like, yeah, ride dirt bikes more often. I totally agree. But how else can I get there?
Yeah. I would, from that perspective, I'd say breathing and then really
Yeah,
paying
get
attention to,
more oxygen in.
yeah, body position
Yeah.
as best as possible. Because, yeah, I know, I mean, exact same thing. I'm going to pump up at some point. Like,
Yeah.
and then it's like, what do you do usually when you do? Well, you relax and you try and breathe. And so,
Yeah, get the oxygen back in the body, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And usually I was not doing that, trying to come up whatever I was trying to come up.
Yeah, you're like, oh shit, that's a huge ledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just noticed too, as like you're as trying to progress through the sport, it's interesting watching like what a C rider needs to do to make that huge jump to be better. And usually for a C rider, it's like just move more. For a B rider, it's like move more than them, right? And then for an A rider, I feel like you're starting to get to the point where like now it's like you can't stop. Like stopping is your deadly sin, right? Any stopping and like, you know, but then as you then transition further and further up the line towards the last, couple percent, those guys are like actually working on speed. So it's like
Right.
all about not stopping.
Right. Yeah, no, it's so funny. Exactly that. Like even Donner, I think I stopped a couple times and I was like, what are you doing? And it's like, well, I
Yeah,
can't
you're sitting there
again.
like, I can't do it. I don't want to be sitting here, but I can't do it. I can't move on. I have to
Right.
breathe. So yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What are your plans this year?
Gonna try and hit the West races. I'm actually talking to like Matt right now to see Hawaii, maybe in the cards. Are you gonna try and do that?
We'll see. Kind of similar boat. If it works out, I'd
Okay.
love to go.
So have you been talking to him about getting your bike on the crate or renting?
Not yet.
Okay.
I just messaged Jared today to see if Jared Lamb to see if he'd heard anything about that. But I should
Okay,
just
yeah.
message Matt.
Yeah, you should definitely hit up Matt and maybe, I don't know, maybe we're letting some of the cat out of the bag. I don't know who he's talking to about it, but he's gonna have like 5,000 people like, I want on your container.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it leaves like a week after, or a couple weeks after King of the Motos, from San Diego or something like that. Um, so yeah, but I'm trying to work that out. It's an expensive trip. It's hard to figure out all the logistics, that kind of thing. But anyway, so King of the Motos, Moab, probably Snakebite, all the West Coast stuff. Silver Kings, excited about that race, even though it's not part of the series this year.
Yeah.
And really want to make my way east. I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but I really want to get out there. It just seems like fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to get out there at some point. I don't think this year is going to happen, but hopefully most of the West. The only one I was thinking of missing would be Texas.
Yeah. Did you go last year?
I didn't.
No. So I was pretty much thinking no, but my buddy's saying that he might road trip out there, so I might fly into that one.
Oh, nice.
So that kind of thing, and that's a lot of it. Is like, how can you carpool? How can you have friends? It's like, dude, this stuff gets expensive. I mean, the gas to get to these places, that kind of just gas alone, like, is stupid expensive.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So that's kind of the plan. How about you guys, West Coast races? That's kind of the deal.
Hopefully the West Series and then Silver Kings. Probably trying to hit the local Montana trials.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Which are super fun.
Going to the trials events is like a whole different ball game. And it's important too. Like practicing trials versus riding like trials events, I think is just like so different.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It is different. It's so different than like a hard enduro race or any type of race. It's so laid back.
Yeah.
And just chill. I would imagine obviously that's going to depend where and what level you're riding trials, but like at the level I'm at and where we go, like it's just super fun.
I have so much fun going to the events. I haven't met a trials guy that's like a dick. I don't know, not even one. So yeah, always have fun there. Yeah. Well, sweet. That sounds like a solid plan for the year.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to see you guys at the races.
Yeah, for sure. King of Moto is freaking coming up.
Coming up real quick. You guys have a heck of a drive in front of you too, coming from Idaho, huh?
Yeah. It's 15, 16 hours, I think, somewhere in there.
Just like all the other ones, light work for you guys.
I know. The only hard part's like when you drive through Page and you're like, I'll see you in 4 weeks. You're like, shit.
Oh, that's brutal. Have you thought about dropping your truck there and like flying back and forth, all that kind of stuff?
Oh, well, I got one. Well, we got 2 trucks, but I need them.
You got a mountain bike. You just ride your mountain bike around. I don't know how your commute situation looks.
I got a fat bike.
A fat bike. Okay, yeah. Not a great commuter.
No. And it's cold as hell.
Yeah, I forgot Idaho problems.
Yeah. No, we've had like a crazy mild winter.
Yeah, the snow hasn't been falling much so far.
If I was in the world of snow machines and I just dropped 20 to 30 grand, I would be pissed.
Yeah. That's a brutal start to the winter. Hopefully some snow starts flying because everybody needs it, but yeah, we'll see.
I'm not worried about it. We get 8 months of winter and 4 months of summer, so there's plenty.
You're like, bring it on.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah, right on. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for coming or having me on. It's been super fun. And yeah, if anybody wants to talk swing arm guards or anything dirt bikes, let us know. We're Crosslinked Components on Instagram. I'm Devin, sometimes and Bryce Barsnick. That's the Crosslinked team. So yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.